So, check this out. The job market is doing this super weird thing right now. In, over 25 states, unemployment is creeping up, which hasn't happened this much since 2020. The national rate went from a chill 3.4% to 4.3%. That's millions of people's paychecks just vanishing in a couple of months. But of course, the government's over there going, "This is fine," while the whole room's on fire. Meanwhile, everyone's credit card debt just blew past $1.14 trillion. Paychecks are basically stuck in neutral and job ads are disappearing faster than they did back in the Great Recession. The experts are calling it a soft landing. If this is a soft landing, then I'm an astronaut. Why are so many of us getting wrecked? Because this isn't some gentle slowdown. Man, it's a silent nosedive. The cracks are showing everywhere. Job sites that used to be overflowing are now just digital ghost towns. You've got over 8.2 million people who are officially out of a job, but that's not even the full picture. There's another 5.4 million who just gave up looking entirely. The government has this cute name for them, discouraged workers, as if slapping a new label on it magically fixes their problems. These aren't just statistics, dude. They're actual people who can't lock down a full-time gig after blasting out hundreds of resumes in places like Ohio, Nevada, and Michigan. Layoffs in factories and shipping companies have shot up by 27% since early 2024. At the same time, big retail chains are sneakily cutting everyone's hours so they don't have to cough up for benefits. That warehouse guy who used to make a decent $22 an hour, now he's juggling 2 part-time jobs at $15 a pop with zero health insurance and forget about overtime. This whole low unemployment story is just hiding the ugly truth. We're all running on fumes. Behind every single percentage point is a family losing its footing. Companies are swapping out actual humans for robots, saving themselves $30 billion a year. The corporations are bragging about record productivity, but we're not seeing a dime of it. Our real wages, after you factor in how insane prices are, have actually dropped 2.3% from last year. Groceries are up 19% since 2021, and the average rent just casually strolled past $2,100 a month. For literally millions of people, every trip to the supermarket is a high-stakes gamble with their bank account. The craziest part about this whole collapse is how sneaky it feels. There wasn't some big dramatic crash or a panic on the news. No headlines screaming recession. It's more like being slowly suffocated. We're all still working, just for a worse quality of life. Companies are technically still hiring, just for way less money. The middle class is basically evaporating one layoff, one cut shift, one rent hike at a time. The job market isn't just imploding overnight. It's got this slow, internal bleeding that's covered up by rah-rah press releases and stats that are always a month behind. The economy isn't getting smaller, the American dream is. And as the difference between the official story and what's actually happening in our lives gets bigger, you have to ask a pretty scary question. How long till this whole fantasy just shatters? What makes this whole thing so messed up isn't just how much it hurts, but how quiet everyone is about it. According to the smarty-pants economists, the first warning sign of a recession is unemployment going up. Well, guess what? We're watching a rerun of that exact movie. Since the 1960s, every single time unemployment has ticked up by more than 0.8%, a recession has shown up right after, like a bad sequel nobody asked for. Right now, that same pattern is playing out, but the people in charge keep telling us not to worry. They say the economy is still showing 2.1% GDP growth. Industrial production looks fine on paper, and corporate profits somehow still look good. But if you peek under the hood, all the things that actually matter are sputtering. Factory orders fell 4.6% last quarter. The optimism of small business owners is at its lowest point since 2010, and construction on new houses has dropped 17% compared to last year. Even the University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index, which is basically a vibe check on how broke everyone feels, is hanging out at levels we haven't seen since the 2008 meltdown. This isn't just about numbers, it's about them twisting the story. The government is cheering for growth, but totally ignoring what that growth is built on. GDP can go up while our lives get worse when the whole economy is running on debt instead of actually making things. And that's exactly what's up. The national debt has exploded past $38 trillion, going up by $1 trillion every 100 days. That's the fastest it's ever climbed in American history. We're financing this illusion of a great economy, not actually earning it. The real danger of this kind of secret downturn is that it doesn't send out a warning. There's no stock market crash on TV, just this slow, weird warping of what normal is. The economy is moving, sure, but it's like a hamster on a wheel. What we're seeing isn't just a regular dip in the road, it's the whole engine getting worn out. Jobs are vanishing, prices are going up, and any productivity gains are built on borrowed time. The data itself isn't lying, but the story they're spinning with it is. And that's why this whole crisis feels invisible. The numbers look okay because they're measured in dollars, not in how many of us are eating instant noodles for the fourth night in a row. It's not the economy that's breaking, it's the foundation it's all built on. And this silent breakdown isn't just happening here in the U.S. anymore. The same tremors are hitting all over the developed world, like some coordinated plan for decline that the economists refuse to actually call a crisis. In Canada, unemployment just hit 7.1%, which is the highest it's been since 2016. Germany's rate is up to 6.3%, and the UK is dealing with 4.7%, on top of a crazy £280 billion in household debt. This isn't just a random bad week. It's a global sign that jobs are shrinking everywhere because of robots, corporate cost-cutting, and the fact that nobody can afford to buy anything anymore. This is literally the first time in modern history that all the big Western economies are tightening the belt at the same time, while their people are watching their standard of living tank. The combined GDP growth of the G7 countries has slumped to below the weakest it's been since 2009. Factory output in Europe dropped 3.4% this quarter, and the amount of stuff North America is exporting is shrinking even though the markets are supposedly strong. Every pulse is getting weaker, yet the central banks are trying to keep up this illusion of control by tweaking interest rates and issuing what they call forward guidance, which sounds more like a therapy session than an economic policy. Behind every slick chart is the same messed up reality. Productivity is stalled, but debt is skyrocketing. In Japan, their public debt is now more than 260% of their GDP. In France, social spending is eating up over 31% of their entire national output, the highest in the world. The whole Western system, which used to be all about growth and expansion, is now just stuck trying to keep the lights on. It's not about growing anymore, it's about kicking the can down the road and surviving. The fact that this slowdown is happening everywhere at once points to one really awkward truth. The entire world's economy is now built on a fragile house of cards. The things that used to protect countries being far apart, having different industries, setting your own money policy, none of that works anymore. We're all caught in this global spider web, so when one market stumbles, everybody else gets dragged down with it instantly. The collapse isn't coming from one place, it's bubbling up everywhere at once, just in super slow motion. And as these cracks spread across the globe, it gets even harder for them to sell us the fantasy that everything's fine back home. The question isn't if times the system will break anymore. It's just a matter of which domino falls first. So while the real-world economy is basically drifting toward a cliff, the stock market is acting like it's party time, record highs, non-stop optimism, all that jazz. But underneath all those green numbers is the giant contradiction that explains this whole mess. The stock market is doing great times because times the real economy, where you and I live, is falling apart. In early 2025, the average stock tanked by 35% for a minute there, but a few months later, the indexes bounced right back like nothing ever happened. That comeback wasn't because business was booming, it was powered by wishful thinking. Trillions of dollars of pure gambling money are just sloshing around in a market that has zero connection to actual jobs, production, or things of value. The U.S. stock market has packed on over $11 trillion in value since mid-2024, while our paychecks have barely budged, only going up 1.3% after you account for inflation. Companies are laying people off with one hand and then using that cash to buy back their own stock with the other, almost $1.1 trillion worth in 2025 alone, the second biggest amount ever. Wall Street calls that being efficient. The rest of us call it getting screwed. The economy is now just a mirror reflecting the wealth of a tiny few, not the well-being of everybody. This whole warped picture creates a dangerous illusion. The investor bros think it's a new bull market, but it's really just a mirage being held up by easy money, not solid fundamentals. Corporate profit growth has slowed to a pathetic 0.6%, and our ability to actually buy stuff is eroding every day. The market's strength isn't coming from a productive country, it's just the side effect of financial voodoo. Okay, so picture this. The entire economy is basically running on good vibes and memes instead of, actually making stuff. It's not a question of times the whole thing will crash, but times when asterisk, and the mental gymnastics you have to do is insane. The stock market is hitting new highs, while none of us have 2 pennies to rub together. It's a society one bad day away from a total meltdown. Everyone sees these insane company values on the news while we're all one paycheck away from disaster. The so-called confidence reports look great because some trading bots can swap optimism faster than a real person can feel their soul being crushed. This whole fantasy world only works as long as the money keeps flowing, right up until one genius in a suit makes one wrong move and snaps the whole thing in half. And when that happens, the same rocket that shot everyone's hopes up will nosedive straight into the ground. See, the market isn't predicting what's next anymore, it's just maxing out the country's credit card. And this entire illusion of a strong market is basically directed by one producer, the Federal Reserve. Every single thing they do is keeping this wobbly house of cards from falling over. Since the middle of 2024, the Fed has been quietly cutting interest rates from 5.5% down to 4.25%, trying to look like they're gently tapping the brakes. But this isn't like other meltdowns where they hit the panic button to save us. This is them trying not to make things worse. They're trying to fight off inflation without causing a full-blown collapse, which, spoiler alert, no one in history has ever actually pulled off for very long. Inflation in the US is still hanging around 3.6%, which is way higher than their 2% goal. The cost of just having a roof over your head went up another 6.2%, gas shot back up by 9%, and basic groceries are still 18% more expensive than before the whole world went crazy. Normally, when they lower rates, it's supposed to get companies hiring and banks lending. But instead, the banks are hoarding a record amount of cash, over $3.4 trillion, because they're too scared to lend money into this mess. The Fed isn't acting calm because they're confident. They're calm because they're totally frozen. And this whole controlled, slow-motion thing is what's so terrifying. Back in 2008, cutting rates was like a 5-alarm fire response to the system failing. In 2020, it was life support for an economy that had flatlined. Today, it's like they're giving a dehydrated person one tiny drop of water at a time. Every little cut just keeps the stock market looking pretty while the rest of us are out here gasping for air. The Fed is propping up the illusion, not fixing the foundation. Every politician will tell you this is a soft landing, but every piece of actual data is screaming brace for impact. The number of companies going bankrupt is up 41% from last year. There's about $1.1 trillion in commercial property loans about to come due, and for the first time ever, the government is paying over $1 trillion a year just on interest for its debt. So the central bank is stuck. They can either raise rates and watch everyone default on their loans, or cut them more and let inflation go wild again. The whole thing is just stuck. The old tricks they used to use to fix things don't work anymore. What you're seeing isn't stability, man. It's just everyone being too damn tired to move. And the longer they keep this fake balancing act going, the worse the crash is going to be when it finally gives. Underneath all the cheerful reports about the economy growing is the real problem. Our personal finances, our ability to just survive, are falling apart way faster than any official report will ever admit. I mean, everyone is buried in debt. The country's credit card is at $17.6 trillion, and just our personal credit card balances are over $1.14 trillion. A new record. Yay, us. And the interest on those cards, it's over 24%. It's a trap. The average person is spending 46% of their paycheck just to cover rent, student loans, and bills, which leaves basically nothing to save or, God forbid, actually live a little. You don't see this problem on the stock market charts because you can't measure the feeling of being constantly squeezed. The national savings rate has cratered to 3.4%, the lowest it's been since 2005, and nobody has any emergency money left. Over 60% of people admit they couldn't even handle a $400 surprise bill without going into more debt. The system calls this consumer resilience. I call it slowly suffocating. It's the same story for big companies. American businesses owe $13.7 trillion, and a lot of that was borrowed back when money was basically free. Now that those loans are due, they have to re-up at today's interest rates, which is going to kill their profits instantly. Just the office building sector has $2.2 trillion in debt that needs to be refinanced by 2027. That's a tidal wave of defaults just waiting to happen, and it could wipe out pension funds and small banks. This isn't some sudden, dramatic crash. It's just the slow, painful process of running out of road. Everybody from regular people to giant corporations to the government itself is completely out of wiggle room. There's no safety net between normal and total disaster anymore, and the scariest part is how quiet it is. All the official numbers look fine, but the whole structure is hollow. The economy hasn't failed, it's just become incredibly fragile. The next big shock, whether it's money, politics, or a hurricane, doesn't even need to be that big. It just has to touch the system in the right spot, and this whole fantasy could shatter in a second. Because after the money runs out, the belief runs out. See, economies don't break when the cash disappears. They break when people lose all hope, and right now, across the whole country, hope is vanishing, faster than it has since the 2008 crash. This one university survey that measures how people feel about the economy has tanked to 61, a number you usually only see when we're in a massive recession. And yet, the official numbers say we're growing. The problem isn't in the math, it's in our heads. People just don't buy the everything is fine story anymore, and you can see it everywhere. 2/3 of us are scared of losing our jobs in the next year. Over 58% of people say their pay hasn't beaten inflation for 3 years straight. So what you have is this invisible depression. It's not about the stock market, it's about morale. We're not protesting in the streets, we're not rioting, we're just checking out. The amount of work people get done has flatlined, even though we're all working more hours. Quiet quitting isn't some edgy protest anymore. It's just giving up. And when things get to this point, the Fed's little tricks are useless. Cutting interest rates can't make people optimistic again, and sending out stimulus checks can't magically rebuild trust. The economy becomes a psychological game. And right now, our collective mental health is in the toilet. In polls, 72% of Americans say the country is headed in the wrong direction, and you can see it in how people spend money. Spending on fun stuff is down 11%. Luxury crap is down 17%, but using payday loans is up 22%. People aren't planning for the future anymore. They're just trying to survive today. The real danger of this quiet recession is that it doesn't look like a disaster. There's no big stock crash, no housing market explosion. It just happens quietly, inside our homes, slowly killing off our ambitions and our sense of community. When people stop believing that working hard actually gets you somewhere, the whole system just dies. The economy is still running, technically, but it's not inspiring anyone. It's not our spending or our jobs that are broken. It's our belief in the whole system. And once people lose faith in the basic idea that effort equals reward, no amount of government meddling or happy talk from the news is ever going to bring it back. The numbers on the screen might still look okay, but the spirit that made them go up is already dead. Every collapse starts with a whisper before it becomes a scream. Our economy is right there, on that quiet edge, where everything looks stable on the surface, but the engine has already seized up. This one weird financial signal, the yield curve, has been flashing red for over 16 months straight, the longest it's done that since the early 1980s. Every single time that's happened before, a recession has followed. The number of companies going belly up has already jumped 58% this year, and the smaller banks are seeing people miss loan payments at a rate we haven't seen since 2012. Look, the whole system is basically running on fumes and ready to completely fall apart. And yeah, we're at that exact moment. Sure, the numbers keep ticking up, but it's like getting a high score in a game right before the power goes out. It's totally meaningless. Wall Street is throwing a party because the line went up, while the guys in the corner offices are secretly stocking up on canned beans for the end times. And the next part isn't going to be some big, dramatic stock market crash like in the movies. Nah, it's going to be a total meltdown of belief. It's when everyone finally looks around and realizes the whole thing is a scam. Our massive economy isn't even growing anymore. It's just stalling out in super slow motion, like a buffering video that's one bad connection away from crapping out for good. And when that little fantasy finally shatters, it won't just drag the markets into the dumpster. It's going to take the entire concept of trusting the system and light it on fire.